Welcome to Turbo Impact, where we navigate sustainability in private capital. I am your host, Kenny Chen. Each episode, we sit down with investors, allocators, and corporate leaders shaping the next era of sustainability. We explore how capital is driving the global transition and how today's decisions are shaping the future of impact. Thank you for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Turbo Net Zero, a pure-play sustainability advisory firm driving impact across the private markets. In this episode, I sat down with Ankit Todi, Group Chief Sustainability Officer at Mahindra Group, to explore how one of India's leading conglomerates is operationalizing sustainability as a core business strategy. Ankit leads sustainability strategy and partnerships across the Mahindra Group, a federation of businesses spanning automotive, agri-tech, financial services, real estate, renewables, and more. With a background in strategic consulting and a personal passion for climate and impact investing, Ankit brings a cross-sectoral lens to driving group-wide transformation. We talk about what it means to deliver on Mahindra's planet-positive vision, how sustainability is embedded into operations, investments, and supply chains, and why credible impact must be both systematic and sector-specific. Ankit also shared insights on sustainable finance, climate tech innovation, and advice for the next generation of chief sustainability officers. Here's my conversation with Ankit Todi. Hi, Ankit. Thanks for joining Turbo Impact Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kenny.
You started your career in consulting at Bain & Co. Can you tell us what first drew you into sustainability?
So sustainability, or rather climate action, is a space that I've always been sort of connected to. And this story goes back to my childhood. I was born and brought up in a place called Dibrugarh in Assam, which is called the tea city of India, and generally is a much cleaner green city, no pollution, good water supply, and we live next to the river. So in a way, there was always a connection with the environment. And then subsequently, I think as I sort of progressed in life, I've generally been involved with a variety of social impact projects in the environment space. And but that was mostly in the personal side. But I think once I figured the world of business, the world of strategy, and when I had the opportunity to join Mahindra, I figured there was a way to bring both the personal area of passion and my corporate skills in strategy and business together, and that's how I ended up in this field eventually.
Mahindra is a multinational group with a diverse portfolio of businesses. As Chief Sustainability Officer, what are your responsibilities for driving across the group?
Absolutely. So, as you rightly pointed out, Mahindra as a company operates in multiple different sectors. There are about six publicly listed companies in the group. There are a number of other subsidiaries, but broadly speaking, we operate in the manufacturing sector where we have a auto portfolio, a farm portfolio, one of the largest tractor manufacturers in the world, and then we have a real estate portfolio, a holidays and resorts portfolio, a variety of renewable energy companies where we do both large scale and small scale solar projects primarily. And then we have a services side of the business where we have companies in the finance sector, mostly doing rural finance, and then subsequently IT services, a company called Tech Mahindra, and so on. My role broadly as part of the group corporate office is to drive two things. One is that internally across these varied different sectors and companies, how do we ensure that we operate in what we call a planet positive manner? The idea is that how do we make sure that you minimize your environmental impact, both in terms of emissions, water, waste, in terms of the kind of materials that you use in the industries, if you're manufacturing something. So how do you minimize the external impact on the environment? That's one part. The second part is also how do you look at decarbonizing the industry itself. How do you create green businesses? So let's say the auto industry is moving towards EVs, the real estate industry is talking about green buildings. So how do you participate in this industry transition towards becoming more greener businesses, and in that process also take the entire supply chain and the ecosystem along? So the one part of my role is basically to support this transition of the group by working together with all the different group companies, their leadership members, etc. That's one part. The second part of my role is to work with all the external ecosystem players. So climate sustainability is a space where a wide variety of ecosystem players are engaging, right from the government in terms of the variety of regulations that's coming, the investor community, both at the global level as well as the domestic level. They have certain expectation. The entire regulatory ecosystem of disclosures, reporting and disclosure. Similarly, there are a wide variety of industry associations, both at the domestic and global level, which are also engaging in the conversation around climate and sustainability deeply. So that's the second part of my role, is to engage with this entire ecosystem, to both bring in pragmatism in terms of what is being discussed, bring in the industry view on the table, and then support the right kind of policies and actions as a group. So that's broadly what I do in my current role.
Thank you, Ankit. You shared Mahindra's core vision is become planet positive. Can you walk us through how this vision was shaped, what it means in practice, and how it drives decision making across the group?
Absolutely. So, as I sort of talked about the fact that in our case, we actually have multiple different industries where, while there may be certain similarities, but it's generally speaking very different from each other. A finance company versus a manufacturing company. So, what we started off was more like a guideline on how we should think about our strategy. And that's what this planet positive strategy talks about. So the first part is everything that is in your operational control. What is it that you can do directly? So in terms of emissions, it's to do with scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. We as a company have a board level target to be as close to 100% renewable energy as possible, be a water positive company, ensure no waste is going to landfill. So all the things which are directly in operational control, and then also areas like material circularity in particular, because for manufacturing context, there is a role that we can play there in terms of how we look at the kind of material that we use for let's say construction or for our cars, etc. So that is the first pillar, the guiding principle. Let's minimize impact in everything that we do and is in direct operational control. Then the second part of this pillar was exactly that most of the transition is not something that can be done standalone by a company. You have to pretty much work with the entire ecosystem together. So on the supplier side, for a number of companies, for a number of industries, what the suppliers do, what kind of solutions they bring, how do they decarbonize the value chain, becomes very important. In some cases, it is also about really rethinking what kind of business model are you operating with. So, for instance, we have a end of life vehicle recycling company. It's a new company altogether. In terms of the nature of the business, so they recycle old vehicles and then um, sort of scrap it in a more organized manner. Similarly, we have built a pipeline of what I would call pure green businesses. So we have a renewable energy company called Mahindra Sustain, which is doing large scale renewable energy projects. So the idea is again that how do we look at being a part of the transition to becoming a green company sector by sector. In some cases, it's also about mitigating risk. So, for instance, we have a rural financing company called Mahindra Finance. A large part of the financing happens in rural India with farmers, and farmers generally will be more vulnerable to climate related risks. So how do we understand that? How do we address that part of the problem? So that is what the second part of the pillar is, that work with the ecosystem to decarbonize the industry itself or help with the industry transition. There was a third part of the pillar, which is was basically to look at the area of just transition, which is where environmental and social outcomes go hand in hand. So primarily through our CSR programs, we are supporting a few things in that area. So one of the things that we focus on is women-related skilling, but also in the regenerative agriculture space. So how do you encourage sustainable farming? Given that again, as a group, uh, we have a significant presence in the farm economy of the country. So how do we ensure that there is resilience and climate adaptation being built in that economy? Similarly, one of the other things that we focus on is biodiversity conservation. Generally speaking, we don't operate in any company which directly hampers biodiversity, but there is often an indirect impact, especially because there are huge land masses that's in control of the company, both in our factory premises, in our renewable power plants, etc. So the idea is that making sure that we follow a policy of no harm in managing these assets. The last part of what I call the planet positive strategy is also a role in terms of transparent reporting and disclosure. So, as a large conglomerate, as a publicly listed conglomerate, especially with a wide variety of investors who are part of the group, there is a relatively high expectation on disclosing and reporting on a lot of ESG related parameters. So that's another area that we work on. We also play a role in terms of advocacy and working with the government because again, the climate transition in India is moving at a rapid pace, and the government is very active in terms of a wide variety of new regulations they are bringing in. And then I think the more important one, the last one I'll cover is also the startup ecosystem. So a lot of the problems with respect to this subject uh, currently don't necessarily have high scale commercially viable solutions. So sometimes you have to work with the innovative startup ecosystem to really look at what kind of solutions work. So piloting a few of these, working with a few of them. So that's the other part. What we broadly look at in terms of our planet positive strategy.
Thank you, Ankit. Mahindra operates across very different sectors, from automotive to real estate and financial services. How do you build and manage a group-wide sustainability strategy that works across such a diverse set of businesses, where you have mature portfolios, you also have emerging and startup portfolios, as you mentioned? Thank you.
No, absolutely. So, Kenny, as I mentioned, at a group level, we have what is a guideline, but then for each industry, each company, it has to be customized to what is most important to them. So, again, if I were to take examples for the finance industry, the most important conversation is climate risk. The other part of the conversation is how do you participate in the green transition? How do you fund the green transition? So let's say EV financing is a focus area, will become an even bigger focus area as EVs become more mainstream. Similarly, if I were to look at the real estate portfolio, there the conversation is about how do you build buildings which are operationally more environment friendly. So uh, we have certain certifications in India around green buildings, which are widely accepted and understood. So we ensure that all the new construction that we are doing are certified to the highest standards of green construction. And similarly, also extending that concept to build buildings which are net zero in terms of its energy consumption or powered by renewable energy sources. Similarly, putting in practices to ensure that they are more water efficient, both in terms of their operations, and in some cases also taking a few measures that how do we ensure that the construction footprint of the building is also lower. Uh, so that's one example. Similarly, if I were to look at the renewable energy business, the business inherently is green in nature, but even there are a wide variety of things we can do in terms of further optimizing for environmental impact. So that's the part where I think the broader guideline helps us then customize it to the specific industry's priorities and nuances.
What has been your strategy for accessing sustainable finance instruments at Mahindra to support these business? And what opportunities and the challenges have you encountered along the way?
So Kenny, as a large publicly listed company, financing has never really been a challenge for us, especially when it comes to debt financing. And most of these projects don't are sort of ingrained and have a good business case in itself. A lot of, let's say, the biggest investments that we have to do are often in renewable energy projects and to some extent in energy efficiency projects. So a lot of these projects are also commercially viable. They have a relatively high ROI compared to the standard for other things. So as a result, financing has generally not been a challenge for a lot of things that we do internally. Now, if I were to take a slightly broader view, then yeah, on the equity side also, over the last 2 years, the group has actually been able to raise upwards of $500 million of financing, especially in our green businesses. So a wide variety of global sovereign investors have come into different parts of our business. To give you a few examples, BII has invested in our four-wheeler EV business. Temasek has invested in our four-wheeler EV business. Similarly, IFC has invested in our three-wheeler EV business. Ontario Teachers Pension Plan has invested in our renewable energy businesses, and so on. So, generally speaking, most of the green businesses have a relatively strong business case, are growing, in fact, growing faster than the rest of the market, and as a result, we get interest both from a wide variety of especially sovereign funds, I would say, which are particularly interested in being party to the green transition.
That's very exciting. So when Mahindra invests in new businesses or incubating new businesses, whether through acquisitions or through emerging business and equity investments, how do you integrate sustainability into that process? And how early does sustainability come into the conversation when evaluating new opportunities? Understand that, for green businesses, it will be a different circumstance. Would love to learn more.
So, Kenny, to be very honest with you, in our case, there are already a wide number of companies that we operate in. So, we have generally been looking at growing our existing businesses. So, there are very few or rare instances when we are completely looking at acquiring a large company. There have been a few instances in the past, but wherever this has happened, the acquired company is also being integrated into our existing business. So, for instance, we recently acquired a trucks and buses company. So, there, depending on the sector that we are talking about, whatever best practices that we are following internally is something that we will look to do. Having said that, another area is something where we do a lot more engagement is with the supplier ecosystem. So across the different group companies, we do work with a wide variety of suppliers, especially in our manufacturing, auto and farm businesses. So there also, the teams have been working on two kinds of activities. One is how do you build awareness and capability with the supplier ecosystem, mostly by sharing what we are doing, how is it effective, what's the business case around it. So that's one action. The second action is also doing some bit of evaluation. So we have been undertaking ESG related due diligence for our suppliers to see are they doing the right thing, and there is also some recognition in terms of the ESG performance when we do an overall evaluation of our suppliers. So broadly speaking, in the supply chain ecosystem, we are both trying to build awareness and capability, and at the same time, sort of evaluate effectiveness of that, and that's something we're trying to slowly do in more and more of our companies. So in the renewables energy business, we have fewer suppliers but generally high value suppliers, and in a few businesses it's more short term transactional suppliers, but a few have suppliers where the relationship goes over multiple decades. So again, depending on the context, the idea is to slowly and gradually deepen engagement on this subject.
Across Mahindra today, what kind of sustainability innovations are you seeing emerge across the businesses?
Sustainability innovations, I think, again depends on the context of which sub-industry we are talking about. But if I were to take a couple of examples, I think energy efficiency is an area where there's a lot that's being done. The way I look at it is energy efficiency can also be implemented in three different ways. One is where you change the equipment to bring in more energy efficient equipment. The second is if you can make tweaks to the process to reduce let's say the uses of equipment itself. So either by avoiding wastage or by changing the process itself to some extent and optimize, let's say cutting down on steps which are not value adding or reducing the duration of operations to sort of avoid wastage. So that's the other one. Third is also a behavior change. At the end of the day, there are always elements where human behavior has a role to play. So I think in that ecosystem, when it comes to the first two, at least, there have been a number of areas where we have been working with a wide variety of relatively smaller startups as well to do data measurement, to change equipment, to do a few experimentations. Then similarly, renewable energy is the other area where we have been working with a few startups as well. The third area of action is also, which is more emerging, I would say, is in terms of materials. So there is generally speaking a lot more conversations around how do you use more sustainable materials or low emission materials. So in that context, also we have been talking and understanding what is happening in the startup ecosystem. Are there any innovations in that space? But yeah, it's a slow moving thing, and also not always super easy to immediately absorb something. There's often a process in terms of confidence in the technology, commercial viability, ability to supply, ease of change, any other implications, etc. But generally speaking, there is intent to learn from startups and see how we can work together.
Among these innovation areas you mentioned, can you share with one of the most exciting initiatives you are observing right now?
So one exciting initiative I would say has been let's say in data measurement. So for instance, over the last couple of years, in our logistics portfolio, we worked with a startup to develop a tool where we can do very granular data emission for the supply chain. So for any material that is being transported from point A to point B, there are a wide variety of data points you have access to in terms of the weight of the material, the distance being covered, mode of transportation, a few sub details of the mode of transportation. So using this for pretty much all the logistics that's being moved around. We work with a startup to do a slightly more detailed version of the emission footprinting or scope 3 emission footprinting for our operations. And then there have been more actions which are being taken to, let's say, reduce this, optimize this. So that's one that I've found very exciting in terms of the content and how it was built. But there are quite a few others. A few I also done in-house, which is more about adoption of the right technology and implementing it at scale. Water is another area where there have been some interesting developments. We similarly have a place where we are doing a very granular water tracking using IoT devices, and it allows you to see the entire water footprint of a fairly large unit. So that's another area. So similarly, there are quite a few, but broadly within the buckets that I shared earlier.
That's impressive, Ankit. So I also want to touch on the social impact-wise initiatives. So Mahindra has launched important initiatives around women empowerment and broader community development. How does the group think about social impact as a part of your overall sustainability agenda?
Social impact is definitely a very important area. So in India, most companies spend up to 2% of their, or rather, I would say 2% or more of their profits into into bringing positive social outcomes. So in our case, women empowerment is a broader theme that we work on. Within that, we focus on both girl-child education and skilling for job creation. But if I were to sort of relate it back to the environment objective, then we have been working in a few areas related to the concept of just transition. that as we undertake social activity, how do you also ensure that it's climate aligned and you're preventing any climate related risk later on. So in that regard, one of the social programs that we run is about reskilling in the farm community to adopt more sustainable practices of agriculture. We have a program which is related to facilitation of skilling in the solar sector. So again, in India, the solar sector is growing rapidly. So we provide free programs for training of people from rural India to be able to participate in the solar sector economy. So those are a couple of examples, basically things which you can support where both climate objectives and social objectives go hand in hand.
Leading sustainability across a large and multinational group brings real challenges. What are some of the biggest hurdles you face today, and how do you work through them?
Absolutely. So, Kenny, the thing with this space is that it's evolving at a very fast pace, and very often a lot of the actions are not entirely in your control. So, this is a space where you very much have to work with all kinds of stakeholders, both within the organization and outside the organization. So, generally speaking, a lot of my time goes into capability building across layers, and then hopefully helping translate some of that understanding into real action in different parts of the organization. So I think that journey is what I would consider the challenging part. That how do you ensure that one, you have other people participating and supporting the work, but at the same time also making a business case for this. So in some cases the business case is easy and financial in nature, it's easy to prove that, so those move a bit faster. But every often once in a while there are areas where it's harder to make a business case or a regulatory case. So it's those areas. How do you still move the conversation along on those is sort of maybe the other challenging piece of the work, I would say.
Among all the actions and the initiatives taking place at Mahindra as a Chief Sustainability Officer, can you share with us a few items that excites you the most?
So I think the one item that I feel is the most high impact, and also personally speaking, I feel the most rewarding is the pace at which we are moving towards renewable energy. So again, over the last 12 to 18 months, there have been a number of large renewable energy projects that we have been investing in, which will, generally speaking, take our renewable energy share from about 30% right now to upwards of 60%. The implied the related implication is going to be, it will also have a very significant lead to a very significant reduction in our scope 2 emissions. So that I feel is something that is meaningful. I'm looking forward for some of these projects to get commissioned and the numbers to start reflecting. The good part about this is that it also has very strong business case. So a very beautiful example of how both environmental and business outcomes can actually go hand in hand, and it doesn't has to compete with each other.
For younger professionals who aspire to become Chief Sustainability Officer like you in the future, what advice would you give them for building the right skills, mindset, and experiences?
Uh, so I think I would say there are two schools of thought here. One is that you can choose to join the space of sustainability, and there, one, obviously interest is important. Second, any sort of understanding or experience you can garner in that sector, either through education, through other forms, internships, etc., or uh, generally sort of reading about it. That's one way to go about it. However, the other way to look at it is that one can also participate in the sector and not necessarily come the sustainability or corporate sustainability route, but basically work in a company which is green in itself. So, let's say if you're working in the solar sector, you're working in the EV sector, you have all kinds of role, but you're still supporting a sustainable business building. And then the third way, uh, I would say is that for any company, it's not just the sustainability teams which can do sustainability actions. Uh, Pretty much every function will have some roles. In some cases, a bit more, in some cases, a bit less. But let's pick up procurement function. So they have a role in terms of supporting the sustainability journey by working with the supplier ecosystem. If you look at the manufacturing ecosystem, they have a role in terms of, let's say, renewable energy adoption, energy efficiency, a few other areas of action. If you look at a public policy team, they will also have a role. So I think what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter what job you are doing. In a lot of cases, climate is one of those issues that is so significant in its impact that most industries and most jobs will get involved or will have a role to play. Some less, some more, but so I would say that it's not just about becoming in the sustainability ecosystem. You can do any role, but still play a positive role, still be a catalyst in your sphere of influence.
That's a very good advice, Ankit. To wrap up our podcast, I ask every guest this question. What do you think is the most effective way to turbo impact in your field?
I think I have generally understood that at the end of the day, it's the investor community, the promoter, the CEO who really sets the direction for any company. So the more you invest in capability building and working with this ecosystem, the higher the chances of accelerating the pace of impact. So working with your investors, working with your internal senior stakeholders, I think is critical. That's what really turbocharges, and you have the resourcing, you have the intent, and then you can sort of do the things. So that's where I would prioritize or focus my actions.
Thank you, Ankit, for taking time to join Turbo Impact Podcast.
Thank you so much, Kenny. Enjoyed the conversation.